for book club in the Habits of Health book. We're going in chapter 2.10, and this is going over first steps introduction to Dr. A's Habits of Motion. It's been a good chapter for everybody. Who wants to kick us off? Kind of share some takeaways.
Man, I highlighted a lot. Let me see what I highlighted in here.
I liked going over the barriers in the very beginning because I think, just addressing those at some point in our own journey, in our client's journey, like what is that thing that's kept us from exercising? Because they talk really openly about those statistics, very few people like just innately want to exercise and do this well. So I found myself in a lot of those barriers because like I just am not one of those people that like enjoys like actual exercise, but like then distinguishing what like exercises versus some of those healthy movements, really helpful.
I just on that very first page, speaking of the statistics of like 60% of us get no regular exercise or no regular physical activity. 25% of us get no activity at all. 50% of those who begin exercising quit within 6 months, and 90% of exercise equipment is unused and relegated to a coat rack or a cat perch 1 year after purchase. It just, for me, it kind of inspired me to not try to do more. That sounds backwards, right? But to just really focus on doing the sustainable part, and not feeling like I need to integrate in a really hard workout all the time. Like, let's get the consistency down so that I don't fall into the 50% of us doing regular exercise and then quitting, which I've fallen into plenty of times in the past. But then reading through the what?
There's an awful lot of supporting data out there that's been collected by the fitness gurus about how many people join in January and drop out very shortly after that, even though they may have a year's membership paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've done it a few times.
Yep.
The first thing that I highlighted in the actual reading, I should say, is that studies show that those most likely to initiate and sustain an increased activity and exercise are those who can connect immediate benefits to their exercise. And then it kind of went into, it's been said that immediate effects, the way the exercise impacts our hormone levels, and that it can be equivalent to taking a Prozac, and that it actually, if you exercise hard enough, like if you get to that level, it actually releases the endorphins and dopamine. And I was like, that is my, right? Like for anyone that knows my challenges, I chase dopamine. Like I want the release of it. And so it's no wonder when I actually push myself a little bit physically, it doesn't take much to like, you can walk for a long time and then just run really hard and it will release. It's no wonder on the days that I push myself physically to get that dopamine hit, I'll call it, I don't crave sugar because I don't need to get it that way, right? So I thought that was really interesting, that you can kind of light up the same places in your brain in a healthy way. I could keep going because I highlighted a lot, but I'll let somebody else share.
Well, Dr. A has that picture on there, and he's talked about this before. And I remember reading it, whether it was in the Life book or this book here, or we've gone over, I feel, but just how it changes your mood. The immediate effects of exercise on page 359: improve mood, increase attention span, increase performance, increase creativity.
For up to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And even though I know as we all kind of get started on this journey, it's like, hey, hold off on exercise. I love that he's not poo-pooing it, right? He knows the importance of it. He knows the physical movement. He's not saying you need to be a gym rat, but because he's kind of alluded to that earlier in earlier chapters of how movement just in general, well, just extra movement is good. But yeah, I'm just impressed by that.
Well, there's research on Alzheimer's too, about 3 hours, basically 3 1-hour sessions during a week. If you do that sustained for the 1 hour, and doesn't have to be strenuous, just enough to break a sweat, that it helps with your getting rid of some of the crud in your brain too.
Yeah, I can imagine how that'd be helpful if it's already, doing some of these things already. Increased attention span and the increased creativity. Well, all your brain. So exercise that too. I love it.
But I feel kind of challenged here, and I don't know how many of your clients have got similar situations, but basically in an apartment, and with the COVID lockdown and one thing and another, and trying to get sustained exercise within the apartment is kind of difficult without getting out and doing a walk or something like that. It's kind of difficult to maintain a constant motion.
Yeah. What Richard doesn't tell you is that when it's sunny, he walks like 5 days a week. What he doesn't tell you is he's so intentional that he'll walk around his counter to get the extra motion, about I think it was like 250 steps, or he'll go up and down the stairs and the flights. Most people don't do that. He's not giving himself credit.
Right.
Just to be very intentional.
We have small quarters too, so we do the same. We also got a stationary bike that helps.
I'm sure that helps. A small apartment makes it a little bit more difficult. But I don't recommend everybody try to run ground floor to 10th floor, but that's
hardcore. I like also the psychological barriers and just connecting, like talking about like the instant gratification and the long-term reward and connecting it to our why. So, we do so much with connecting our why or our clients' whys to their goals. And so connecting that why to the working out, that exercise, not necessarily working out, I guess, but it's just helping them really get through those barriers or those excuses and help them increase that activity. So I think it all just kind of goes back to the same why, and that why might be a little bit different when it comes to exercise. We can kind of revisit that when they get to that stage of their journey, but it's an interesting thing to think about and help them get away from that instant gratification mindset and look at those long-term returns.
No doubt. I liked, you know, it was on page 360. I had just highlighted the physical activity level. And it's good. I don't think you know, it's just you just don't know what you don't know. And that's what I love reading about this thing is because that happens to me every time I read this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, well, of course I knew that, you know, or I didn't think about it. But it's talking about the activity thermogenesis, just how the body, you know, generates heat as it moves, and at the energy levels used by our muscles to move and support our body. I think, I don't think we ever really think about that. Well, I'm not going to put everybody in that bucket. I don't really think about that from time to time, where it's just like, oh yeah, all these little things that I'm doing is, you know, using up energy, burning calories, the little extra things. It just never occurs. Usually, and I think most people would say, well, no, I've got to be running, or no, I've got to be in the gym. And that's how I, you know, I'm losing the weight, or I'm doing whatever. Well, like Richard says, I think that's the game plan of the gyms, is to make you feel that way, where you have to be in the gym if you're actually expending energy. Well, no, it's not the case. You know, there's so many other things that we could be doing. And Marisa's got the stationary bike. Cindy runs, you know, like we went on a walk yesterday for an hour and such. And there's just other little things you can do that don't have to be in a gym.
And fidgeting in a crowd can get to be kind of irritating too.
Yeah. I that was that last chapter, talk about fidgeting, how that burns energy. Yeah. You might be annoying somebody else, right, Richard?
After a while. Just think about your kids.
Yeah, that was Richard and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about, I think it was in 2.9. We talked about the fidgeting. He's like, yeah, did you know that you could, you know, burn extra energy fidgeting? And we talked about fidget spinners and how that was a big thing for so long. And the racket, where's that now? It's gone, right? Well, does it not work anymore? You know, for people's attention?
They're not gone. My kids still utilize them.
They?
I think just the craze of them is gone, you know, like
Yeah.
there's not all this hype around them anymore.
No longer $10 to buy, they're $1, right? That's when you know.
Yeah. Like the cool kids aren't thinking they're cool anymore. You know, now they're back to just like people that actually want to fidget.
Or you can find them at Goodwill now, probably.
Yeah,
True.
probably.
Uh-oh, can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
I can't hear you. Okay, I'll be back.
There was a little side note on the sidebar of that same page that says EAT is like your graduate degree, but first you need your prerequisites, and that's where NEAT comes in. And I just think that's a cool way to think about it, because that's really what I like talking about with clients right now. I was just talking to one this morning, like I just want to make sure you're not like graduating straight to like EAT activities. that sounds funny, because it's like, yeah, I don't want you doing that either. But you know, focus on those healthy movements first, and just kind of, like Anna was saying, get consistent and not worry about like graduating right away.
Yeah, in here. And then I guess was that, I don't know what sidebar you were looking at, but the side 361, Dr. A lists, starts off by saying, you know, once you've got the basics of NEAT, non-daily exercise under control will solely integrate you into EAT with planned exercise. Why? Because along with helping you maintain a healthy weight, regular moderate exercise, and then he goes down the list all these benefits of it. And we already know because he's talked about this, the benefits of just getting healthy without any of this, how, which science shows, but reducing stress. And I know that I've talked to so many people where they have a hard time giving up that some sort of exercise. And it's a mental thing for them. It's not like, I mean, they need that release, for their personality or who they are. And especially now in this last year with everybody being cooped up, losing their minds, right? Of course they want to get out and about. Lowering blood pressure, strengthening muscles, bones, and joints, improving metabolism, strengthening your immune system from working out. Helps prevent depression. There we go. Just talking about that. Increased bone density. It's just the way we're built to live, and maybe not through, as 10,000 years ago, as he always talks about, it was more about hunting, and that's how we stayed active and survival, but it's different now. So we have to be more intentional. Let's see here.
What page are you on? I got a different
That was on the
sound
side,
source.
sidebar, page 361.
361, perfect. I want to make sure I'm not going back.
And he actually says, and I have highlighted on the second to last paragraph, he's like, eat only works if you do it.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean
Few of us
eat.
actually do.
So he's like, that's, that's the problem with it. I think
But I
that's
feel like when you get neat, right? Like when you get neat down, then it's easier to implement. Like, and now I do this other thing, but so many of us don't have the neat system down, and we're like, I'm gonna run however many miles a day, and it's like, no, you're not, because your legs are gonna get sore, and then you're gonna quit. That's me. I mean, I've been getting better at it, like because of all of these lessons that I'm learning, but still, it's no wonder that so few people actually look like Chris Kidd. I mean, I'm serious. Like that it takes discipline and commitment and dedication and a system to actually
every day.
do that every day. I mean, there's Carrie and I have talked about how like he'll have a really good routine, right? And then we go on vacation, or we had the kids for Christmas break is what it was. That all the kids for Christmas break, he did not work out during Christmas break. And then he's like, now I'm having trouble getting back into it. Like it feels like I'm starting over. And so, he is back into it, right? We talked about like, okay, so how can I support prioritizing that, right? Like I can adjust my schedule a little bit to support that you come home every day after work and you do it to kind of get you reinvigorated. But if we hadn't talked about it, if we weren't, on a health journey together, I don't know that he would have restarted yet. Because it's like you just kind of go into that like lazy mode,
No, for sure. Yeah, when you snap out, it's like, I mean, it happens even doing the program, pop out. It's hard to get started again.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the mental shift that happens, I mean, I guess it's all up here, right? Like, what do they say? We're not unhealthy or fat because of food. We're unhealthy and fat because of our minds. It's the same thing. What was I was just looking at something. Oh, it must have been on this page. Oh, yeah, it was. Can standing for 1 hour a day cure obesity? Did anybody else find that super interesting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where'd you read that at?
On page
363.
362. It's the study, the obese group stayed seated for about 2.5 hours longer than the lean group, burning on average 350 fewer calories a day. Holy cow. And then it says that they've learned from some work that a mere 100 to 200 calories per day of excess intake may well account for today's obesity epidemic. But to think about, like, if we just stand up to take our calls, right? Like, that we are potentially burning an extra 350 calories just by standing instead of sitting. That blows my mind. I mean, it's no wonder, like, Cindy, you know, I think about our meeting life and our desk life at Kaiser. Like, no wonder I just couldn't lose the weight. I was sitting for 10 hours a day.
Right? From meeting to meeting. Didn't even have the opportunity to stand up sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I know that's the way it got to be toward the end of my career, when you were spending 10 to 12 hours a day, either at your desk or in a meeting.
Yeah. And then in a car driving, you know, for Cindy and I, our commute was an hour to 2 hours each way.
And well, you know, I told Andrew, you know, for a large part of my career, I was on the floor constantly. And the boss basically changed the philosophy in the group, and he said, okay, now you're in a situation where you are supervising other people, and I want you to spend 50% of your time thinking about how to make things better rather than doing.
Mhm.
And so for 25 years or so, that has been a focus, and it is kind of an attitude change as I retire, to go from stationary to mobile.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? So I spent 11 years working at Starbucks, and then I went to corporate with Kaiser, and very, very different. And so as I reflect back, it's like, well, no wonder I ate way more at Starbucks and, you know, way more junk, but I was not as heavy because I was moving all the time. And then I went to Kaiser and I ate less and I was more conscious of it, but I kept gaining because I wasn't ever, you know, my NEAT, it's not about the exercise part, it's just the NEAT system. I wasn't doing anything. Anyways, that statistic kind of like stood out to me, got me really thinking.
I know it blows my mind if you go to a hospital or a doctor's office and you find people who are dealing with health conditions all the time, and you find an awful lot of them that are more than overweight. Some of them are obese, and some of them are morbidly obese.
Mm-hmm.
And they're dealing with the consequences every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt motivated by that.
I love how they relate it to kids, like how kids, you know, they just move. Like they're always playing, they're always moving, they're always going from A to B. They don't really sit still. And that's why, so then I always think back, because when I, you know, first talked with Marisa about like my health assessment, it's like I was at my healthiest in high school, my healthiest.
Mm-hmm.
But that was different stage of my life where like I wasn't at a sedentary job yet. I was walking from class to class, like had like regular PE things, you know, you were always moving, still kind of in that kid stage of life, but a little bit different. And then
Mm-hmm.
you go into the work world when you graduate high school, and all of my jobs were sedentary for the most part. So I just like, if I would even just like use my child's energy to like do more things intentionally with him, because he's already like doing that. Like all I have to do is piggyback off of what he's doing and go outside with him and be more intentional about that.
Yeah. Ashley, I literally had the same thought. I was like, man, what if when my kids moved, I just tried to move with them?
Yes.
And what if I wonder what my like step count would be for the day if I just
Way
I'm
past 10,000.
curious, right?
You'd have no
Yes.
problem
I
sleeping
even
at
thought about
night.
my dogs, right? Where I'm like, I feel like my puppy just sleeps all day. I'm like, but I wonder how many steps he gets in when he is moving, right? Because when he is moving, he's just zipping around for like an hour. Woo!
Yes.
And then he sleeps. Anyway, I literally thought the same thing. Like maybe I should
I
just
love it.
mirror my kids one day, you know, like eat when they eat, play when they play.
Right.
Yeah.
They got it figured out. I'm telling you guys, kids and dogs.
Life.
363 it talks about how the average person spends 44 hours a week at work, and then goes on to say, let's not forget about the travel and such. And I was thinking about this as you were talking, Anna, about how I left the Army and I jumped into loss prevention when I got out of the Army, and loss prevention was on the floor a lot, catching people stealing or whatever. But I was walking all the time. Got married to Cindy, and then shortly thereafter became a private investigator, and then any movement stopped. It was wake up, get in the car, travel for an hour minimum to an assignment, sit in the car for 8 to 12 hours, like literally not moving, just sitting in my front seat, and
Eating.
Then in Seattle traffic for another whatever, and then coming home, having dinner, and then sitting for another 2 hours to write reports, and then do it again and do it again. And that was my life. And next again, I was 285. Went from about 200-ish, being married to marrying Cindy, to that. And it was just, and then of course the food and all the crap I was eating didn't help that. But there was literally no energy nor time to, even if I wanted to expend it, there was nothing left. I was done. I was tired. It was late. Every night was a 9 o'clock night, life suffered. But I'm not the only one. I mean, I'm probably like on the far end of that scale of lack of movement, but back then at least. But that's USA. That's probably the majority of folks, living in the corporate world. I would assume,
Totally.
I didn't have really a choice to be intentional about it, but I think we talked about it last book club, where I was talking to different people, and they're like, now they're being super intentional about it. Like, I eat my fueling on my break and I walk, or my lunch, I'm walking around the building. I wish I would have, thought about that kind of stuff. I didn't, but I'm really, for those who consciously being able to think about it, reading about it, or aware of it, I love it. It's just, I'm proud of them. Richard being one of them, just offhand.
You don't find too many overweight guys marching guard duty on the Tomb of the Unknown.
Right. Constant movement. I agree. Anybody else?
Really kind of starting to think of my heart as a muscle. I mean, intentionally thinking of it, not being like, oh, my heart's a muscle. Like, obviously I knew my heart was a muscle, but like if I want to change my butt, right, I'm going to think of it as a muscle, and I'm going to challenge it with squats and lunges and weights. And so thinking of my heart in that same way kind of got me thinking about like the not even overdoing it, right? Because it talks a little bit about I don't remember if it was on this page or not, but that you can actually like overdo it. Like we don't actually want too hard of physical activity unless we're really trying to increase our fitness level.
That's one of the things that I've really benefited with the Fitbit. Keeping track of heart rate and knowing what the heart rates are, and it gives you your heart reserve, and it tracks your sleep, and I've really found it to be a real benefit.
Yeah, well, that kind of jumps ahead. I'm going to jump ahead since you brought that up. And I love that you brought that up to the page 366, where it talks about your MHR, your maximum heart rate, and your THR, your target heart rate. And I had this moment of like, oh my gosh, how ignorant have I been in my exercise? Like, I didn't even think about this when I'm exercising, nor did I have any idea what was healthy for my heart at my age, etc. And so I'm confident that there's times that I'm like running and I'm exceeding the 184 maximum heart rate that I should be for a decent period of time, instead of noticing that and being like, okay, I should bring it down. And like, that's where I should keep it as I increase my fit, right? Like eventually your heart will catch up and then you can push harder and still have a healthy maximum heart rate, instead of just pushing through even when you're like, like, right, thinking you're doing good stuff, and really you're like, you're tearing your muscle, if you will. It's so silly. Like, we push this thing that keeps us alive harder than we push our calf muscles, for example, because they hurt differently, right? Anyway, so I love that you bring that up of like tracking your heart rate, and that's really how we should be determining how hard we push, not like, I don't know, my mind gets like, can I go faster for one more minute? And you're like, I mean, you can if you don't pass out, like, right? But what is that even really serving me? Keeping it in a healthier heart rate range is more beneficial to what I'm actually trying to accomplish than running faster, harder, and longer. So I love that. You know, I always tell my clients, like, oh, you don't need to get a Fitbit if you don't already have one. And in reading this element, I'm going to change what I say. Like, it's not a must, but it is like, I mean, it is the first item on the list of not musts, you know, like I absolutely would consider investing one in the first few months of your journey if you don't already have one, because
it keeps track of your motion during the day.
Totally.
It lets you know, okay, you haven't moved in a certain period of time, and it keeps track of, you know, if you've got 250 steps in, it tracks it for 9 hours.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It gives you a good way to measure, you know, what's going on.
Yeah, and Dr. Anderson even mentions it in here, like you should get one, even if it's not fancy. You know, you can get the cheap little ones that just do the ticks every time that you take a step, but the difference that it can make, as we talked about with the, you know, the standing versus sitting, right? Like it's pretty darn close to a must.
I question this chart though that they have as far as energy expenditure, with stair climbing being less than walking.
Where do you see that?
That's on 363.
Oh, I see.
Because when I get to 10th floor, I'm a lot more tired than I am walking.
You know, I would question, not question the stats, but I'd be curious to understand, because, you know, like walking, for example, versus running, you burn more fat. Like, it keeps you in that fat burning range instead of the cardio range.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious how that's measured.
Yeah, I wish he would have cited it somewhere if he's using these, you know, graphs. He's good about that through the entire book. Maybe you guys saw it somewhere. I don't see it.
It didn't. I mean, it says that James and his team at Mayo Clinic measure the knee activities. So maybe there.
Yeah. Guess I have to look up that one then. See if there's anything in there.
If you guys ever, I mean, most people know about this, but I always find that there's some people that don't. But if people have specifically clients that you're talking with, and maybe there's a financial thing, but they're interested in the Fitbits, and I know we've talked about different things. There's a health app on iPhones that is really, really cool that tracks most of this stuff too. So it tracks your steps without you even looking at it. You can connect it with a like a heart, monitor type of app, and all sorts of free things that basically track all of this stuff for you too, just right at your fingertips with your smartphone, which is super nice, because I just never really wanted like a watch or like a thing to like wear all the time. I just don't like it for me personally. So I always have my phone with me. Like even if I do go on a walk, it's in my pocket, so it still tracks all of it for me.
Yeah, I like that. On page 364, I got pretty excited when I learned that chewing gum can increase your energy expenditure by 20%.
Same. I did too.
Right? I'm like,
yes,
oh,
I'm burning calories.
it's like it's the small little things, right? It like
Yes. I'm moving my
it's
jaw,
just
so I'm burning
interesting.
calories.
Yeah, a faster pace, like picking up your pace can increase it. Picking up your pace to 2 to 3 miles per hour, and you'll nearly triple your energy expenditure from like slowly strolling. Like that, I mean, when you just put it like that, you're like, I guess the 5-minute walk really does matter when you have a good pace going.
Mhm.
I just hope people don't look at that and go, well, I'm chewing gum, so I'm exercising. I know you're going on this really healthy walk. I'm doing my walk right here. No.
I'm practicing my NEAT activities.
Just didn't even think about that. Like, gosh, I guess I really should carry zero guilt when I'm chomping on that piece of gum.
I wonder how many
Interesting.
calories you burn with a head smack.
I don't think that's in here. Dr. A didn't cover that in his research, I guess.
Yeah, he didn't.
Anybody else got anything that they got any takeaways? I know we've kind of walked through the chapter.
I don't have anything else. I really enjoyed this one. It felt really relevant for kind of where I am right now in my journey. So that's probably why.
I thought it was pretty vital that you take a look at on 64. Anytime you change your activity level, check with your healthcare provider. For somebody my age anyway, that's important.
My
Yeah,
age
I mean,
too.
especially when people have like medical conditions and things like that. Like it's always like blanket statement, everything we do, like, yes, please talk to your physician still.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my takeaway towards Ashley's NEAT and EAT was, a lot of people think of it the other direction, with eating being number one. And I think like Ashley had mentioned, you need to put that on the back burner and get NEAT first. You can focus, you've eaten enough. Let's just put it that way. You've exercised, you've eaten wrong, and now you're here because you want to become neater. So you need to be able to work your activities without activities. Play with your children. If you guys mentioned about your children, I'm on the ground with my kids all day. I don't know if it's because I'm old, but that's where I want to be. That's activity. And with Richard around the health providers, now, is that the 5 people you're surrounded with? And you're happen to be the person helping those 5? Like Richard was saying, is that their environment? Are they surrounded with people that, like he was mentioning, most health nurses, health providers,
Oh, the overweight.
Yeah, the overweight part, is it their environment that they just get bombarded by these people's problems all day, so they just go home and work it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know Richard's surrounded around people who are, well, he goes on a walk intentionally with his aunt. And so that blew me away because, you know, Richard's retired and that's his aunt, and his aunt's still doing it, right? And going out and walking with him. So it probably does more activity than a lot of folks do, which is good. It's so intentional, and he's built a habit, which is, but that's, you know, we always talk about that, the habit. So yeah, I love it, guys.
Be more like Richard. That's my takeaway today. Hashtag be more like Richard.
It's true.
Goals, Richard. I'm going to be like you today. I'm going for a walk as soon as we're done.
9 active hours.
Try to keep your hair though.
Like that?
Overrated.
Talking to Richard too long, and this is what happens. We just start.
You don't want to end up like this.
I'm working on it.
You're rocking it. I love it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for all coming on today to kind of point out your thing. You guys point out some stuff that I didn't even catch, which I love, and that's why I love coming to these things, because it brings a different perspective, and I think we all need that. Because sometimes we can be in our own bubble and interpret things just the way we want to interpret them. So I'm glad we get to all kind of share. Couple weeks from now, 2.11, Dr. A starts getting into the specifics of NEAT. It looks like, at least for 2.11, it's the NEAT system. So looking forward to going over that with you guys. Other than that, let's take a quick picture, if you don't mind.